So after kind of doing 14, 15 years as an SEO, PPC, search expert, working for loads of different businesses, agencies, direct clients, and obviously as a freelancer, I get access to loads of different sectors and teams and that kind of stuff. There's a handful of common denominators that I see where if kind of line managers and business owners just kind of switched onto these things, they'll get so much more out of the market and stuff in general through productivity, just make them feel a little bit better coming to work and all that kind of good stuff. And it's not that expensive to roll stuff like this out. So the very first one is I see a lot of people presume that the person is the key asset to marketing, when actually that person is ultimately operating the machine every day, which is the laptop, computer. So what some examples that I've seen is when I've worked with tech people in agencies or within a client environment, they'll run perhaps crawling software and the laptop's just terrible. It'll sound horrible. It'll slow the work down. There's a few times where I've had to kind of step in and stop employees running crawls. I'll run it on their behalf so they can actually just do other stuff. And it really shouldn't be that way. So effectively, the laptop is a key asset. And what I typically do is I'll ask a new member of staff, do you prefer Windows, do you prefer Mac? I kind of know what job they're doing. So I know they'll be running, Sideball, Screaming Frog, which are very intensive softwares. On a bad laptop, it'll literally bring everything to a standstill if they try and dethrottle some of it or they try and do like Chrome JavaScript rendering and that stuff. So you're basically putting a huge restriction on staff by not giving them a good laptop. And for the sake of spending one, two, £500 extra over the 3 year period, that's going to be pennies versus what you get back or what you waste with productivity. So recommendation wise, if you've got perhaps like a tech SEO person or market in general, there's obviously Photoshop, like your Canva or whatever. There's some really kind of technical crawling software like Sitebulb, Screaming Frog. There's also the amount of tabs in Chrome that markets have opened horrendous as well. So what you need to be looking for is firstly is set up things like um, activity monitor on Macs and also task manager, so some kind of reporting tool on that. And what you're looking for specifically is memory usage and CPU usage remaining in kind of high 80s, 90s, which can happen when you're running these types of crawls. So as a rule of thumb, what I look for is 16 gigs of RAM is kind of non-negotiable. It's amazing how many laptops are issued with 8 gigs of RAM. And you're restricting the day-to-day work of your staff. And then another thing as well is a nice looking laptop and good kind of CPU. Personally, I think the M1, if you go for a Mac, the M1's better than the M2 because there's some kind of solid state enhancements there. So I've noticed the M1 much quicker. But it's £1,000 laptop and it's the best investment we'll ever make, I think, getting stuff. Another secondary benefit as well, if they get a laptop that the employee has had involvement with purchasing preference wise, it's amazing like how much better you feel just jumping on the laptop for 10 minutes on an evening or whatever it is with a laptop you actually want to use. So me personally, I've got a MacBook Air and I'll literally take it everywhere. And I've got 10 minutes on an evening, so I check a few emails. It feels really good to use it. Really nice laptop. If I was issued a Windows laptop, even if it was high spec, I probably wouldn't feel as good using it. And the thought process I've always got is what touch point do I use the most? So what I use the most over, say, a 3 year period, that's my last 3 years, is where I'll invest the money personally and obviously with new members of staff. So first thing is laptop. Second thing, things like chairs. So old school, I bought like an office chair, standard office chair, which gives a bit of a bad back when I'm doing kind of 12 hours some days, which is not good. So I've got this ergonomic one now, which was worth the money. It was probably 3 or 4 times more than the original chair, but I've paid for that several times over. So office environment, I think, identify the key touch points, and that's where it kind of channel the money. I'll personally recommend good laptop. And the last thing on point number one is things like this. So actual screen cleaner, wipes, like some of them are finger magnets, and do you know what? You feel so much better working on a clean laptop. There's some clients I've worked with, and the laptop's just in a really bad disarray, and you just can't feel good using it all the time. Obviously, it just feels like the company isn't investing in the staff very well. So that's something that I always try and um, that's why I always try and work around is like how well they're kind of looked after and um, laptops is usually a sign, the state of the chairs is the other sign, and then just like other touch points. So they might have meeting rooms with really kind of cheap stands and all that kind of stuff, and it's just not a feel good factor. But I don't know because I'm a techie and that as well, but ergonomic chairs is a really good one as well. Um, so that's the first one, is invest in your staff and give them kind of some feeding into the bigger picture. You know, what laptop do they prefer using? And then obviously we tailor the tech specs around what they're doing a day-to-day job as well. This might not be for everything. If sales staff, for example, whether it's using web-based CRM potentially or like HubSpot, then you can probably get away with 8 gigs of RAM. It's just about literally tailoring that journey down to that particular employee and getting the most out of that pound really. So spend a little bit more, but over a 3 year span, it'll be work out as pennies, and actually the pounds that it brings back, then pennies in efficiency work will be phenomenal. Next one is what I call kind of controlled narrative, which is something I see the good businesses doing really well, and the businesses that don't adopt this really well kind of go with the wind, and then they'll identify a problem, then it's all hands on deck, and it's very kind of knee jerk reactions. So what I mean by controlled narrative effectively is using software. I'll give you an example, SEMrush, which will send an email every Monday morning with rankings for 5 to 7 keywords to the client, or it could be a line manager, business director, whoever. So you've identified these 5 keywords is a key objective, which keeps everyone's focus on one position. So it doesn't have to be them keywords. It could be traffic, it could be revenue or whatever it is. But basically, you've got a consistent report every week at the start of the week, so you've got time to fix it, which showcases literally the core metrics. And one very important part I'd have alongside this is if if you send this controlled narrative around every Monday where, look, these are the key figures, KPIs, you've got to put a caveat in there to say, look, I'll listen to any other metric as a secondary metric that you believe success or not working as well, but the core focus is on these key metrics. So if you're head of or ecom director or whatever that could be, obviously EBITDA, but you'd also have things like primary traffic levels, revenue, not so much conversion rates, I guess, from a global level, but having amalgamation of rankings, sales, margin, and that kind of stuff. If you're an SEO exec, it could be rankings because that's kind of the primary factor with revenue. PPC, it could be spend every week. And it's making you be a bit more reactive to the business, but it controls that narrative where everyone's striving. Nobody wants to see red on a Monday morning, so they'll work towards that. And what you'll find is when they work on these core controlled narrative metrics, the secondary metrics that they'll bring to you will be contribution of work on that primary metric. So in order to grow sales or rankings for these keywords, they'll have to do certain things on a site-wide level, and then what we'll say is like an elevation of all of the metrics, hopefully alongside it. So businesses that might have a Monday report where everyone's fed in the core metrics, and then they might have a Monday lunchtime meeting where they'll basically just run through the figures, it's half an hour to an hour, but it sets the tone for that week, gets everyone on the same page. What I've seen sometimes in the past is you'll have people who don't have this, and then next thing they know, they're getting dragged into a meeting and dragged over the coals because leads are down 40% and no one really knew about it, just as an extreme example. So you never want to put stuff on the back foot where they don't know the important metrics. So anything that you're looking at, get it in a controlled narrative every week, and then allow staff to bring secondary KPI metrics to you as well. So what tends to happen sometimes is every month you get a report and nobody looks at it. So I'd keep it weekly, keep it brief, no more than 3 kind of core things to look at. Whether it's traffic, rankings for key flagship keywords or whatever, but keep it small, concise, and as a primary keyword, metrics, and what you'll see is that narrative constantly being driven because nobody wants to see red on a report. But what can happen is data can be presented in multiple different ways. So it always looks greens, or it looks like it's equaled out green with red, but get them centralized metrics sorted and a frequency that's regular where people can react. There's no point sending it on a Friday, personally, because everyone forgets about it for the weekend usually, and then on Monday it's like we'll just crack on as normal. But Monday you've got that in the back of your mind that I've got 4 days to fix this really. So it's really important, I think, that control narrative. Um, and the last one, third one, is get marketing staff in the room as much as possible with salespeople. Like genuinely, this is probably more of an optional one for people who have sales staff and marketing staff, but they're not the same. What it gives off is marketing love praise of sales staff typically. I'm kind of generalising here, but if sales are in a meeting say, look, leads have been really good this week and here's why, or we've noticed this and been so very well in marketing, go away and actually fixing that trend. That's kind of the cohesion you really want, is that reciprocal feedback between sales and marketing. What the risks or what you're trying to mitigate is sales and marketing sometimes butt heads, where you've got an offline sales force and an online marketing channel, where kind of taking sales from staff, you want that cohesion in there as well. So don't have a sales meeting and a market meeting, have a sales and market meeting together. I always recommend, even if you're pricing the sales staff, they want to run through specific leads for the first half an hour, bring marketing in for the last half an hour, and marketing remains back for their part of half an hour. But that cohesion for 30 minutes where they run through a quality of leads, get sales feedback, and also what are sales staff getting asked on a regular basis, like have you tried turning it off and on again, kind of questions where we can try and answer them on the website and just build that cohesion. So then three key things, I think, if you implement them kind of from day one, or you perhaps do a review of your IT equipment or just the office environment, things like that as well. Go back to the basics on the reporting. What do we need to see every week? What do we need to see every month? And it's not just a case of dropping in the inbox, but actually having a follow-up dialogue with it as well. So everyone shouldn't really be dreading a Monday meeting. They should be excited to kind of show you the work that you've done for the previous week. And what you basically want is, on the narrative, is that it's kind of like a skeleton, is being sent every week of the numbers, and then you bring staff in to kind of put meat on the bone, essentially, where you build up that full picture. And it allows you to sense check as well from a good business common sense perspective, as well as what they're saying is the right direction. So if they're pushing the wrong products or seasonality or things like that as well, so it's considered of. And you want a lot of salesmanship to rub up onto marketing, because marketing will probably look at a longer term vision. Sales look at a very short term picture of how many calls they've had, which is both good in the pipeline. It also gives them exposure to things like sales cycles and is the stuff we can automate. There's always good things I see when you put sales and marketing in a room together, because marketing becomes a bit of a sponge and sales become more aware of the marketing challenges. So another thing I see is the sales staff's on site with the client's singing the praises of the business. First thing that goes in the back of the minds of the sales staff is case study, or can I get some snaps for marketing or videos on social media, and kind of just want to build that cohesion between the two departments. So that's the three kind of core elements. I think if you're implementing, your productivity with marketing staff are going to fly, and there's not a lot of businesses that I see kind of adopt these three things, especially from an agency perspective, having that controlled narrative there every week, where what it might be at today's NPS or perhaps retention figures, but actually what I would like some agencies just to see doing, which I think would be really good, is getting an email to the directors every week of the agency with the performance of the clients they're working on. It's campaign lead, so the director might get 12 to 20 emails or whatever it is a week, but from a client lead perspective, it just shows you like the progress the clients are making, because you probably have a similar dialogue internally what the clients having at their side, and also getting these dialogues down for the client as well. So where the best use of my time is when clients have this built in, and they'll draft me in as part of the dialogue around that weekly meeting. So why is rankings dropped for these three flagship key terms? Or we're doing a really good job, we're in second position, can we hold it, and all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, that's I've seen loads of common denominators, but I thought they're the three biggest to start with, and probably one of the cheapest to fix, or they're just based on sunken costs as well, where it's just basic spending time as opposed to actually forking out loads of money as well. So if you've got any questions, just give me a shout. Contact details should be in the bottom, and also the website as well. Feel free to drop a phone request or drop us a text, WhatsApp, email if you have any questions as well. So hopefully you found that useful.